Pig's feet. Ew, barf. Ugh.
Love her or hate her, Paris Hilton is an American original. A woman whose beauty, wealth,
Look at these diamond earrings, please.
and fearlessness let her live life entirely on her own terms. The great-granddaughter of hotel magnate Conrad Hilton, Paris and her sister Nikki were born into a family empire worth over $5 billion. But since her teens, Hilton has acted like no other heiress, doing what most people, rich or poor, would never dare.
What is it about Paris Hilton that fascinates people so much? It's a number of things. I think she's having fun and she smiles through it all. She doesn't care, and I think that's why people love her. She is invincible.
There are the people who see her as a, a sort of sign of the decline of Western civilization. And then there are people who see her as sort of kitsch and camp. Paris Hilton is the 21st century version of the madcap heiress, but the rules have changed so dramatically. Debutante like Jacqueline Bouvier, also a chain smoker, and we didn't see images of her smoking ever. Paris is doing things that would have led to a Barbara Hutton or a Gloria Vanderbilt being banished to the Swiss Alps. And for Paris, it lands her covers of magazines. And there is absolutely a way in which the lack of a facade is very sort of refreshing.
With Paris, just like the way it was with Elizabeth Taylor and Audrey Hepburn, Grace Kelly, Princess Diana. People connect to them with their hearts and their minds. And they see these beautiful young women and they think, that's who I am, that's who I want to be, that's what I want to be.
A friend of mine once said, Paris was born without a filter. She does as she pleases. She has confidence and she's a free spirit.
I think Paris grew up in the lap of luxury. She's very spoiled, and I think that she's unapologetic about it.
Paris tries to, act completely opposite of what you'd expect an heiress to act like. And in doing that, she has created the new image of what it means to be young and wealthy in America.
The so-called celebutante has been idolized as a fashion icon and blasted as a morally bankrupt publicity seeker, even before the scandalous sex tape that first made her a household name.
There's actually a huge difference between the public Paris and the private Paris. The private Paris that I know is actually, very sensitive. She's really, curious about the world. She sort of projects this image of, I'm confident and look at me and aren't I beautiful? But behind all that is just someone who is, just as insecure as anyone else would be.
A lot of people think that I just get everything on a silver platter and I don't work. I get up every morning, I'm recording an album, I'm doing movies, I have a clothing line coming out. I work every single day and people think that this is just, happening. I really work my butt off.
I hate when I read in these newspapers, like the Hilton heiresses, they don't do anything, blah, blah, blah. What were you doing that was so important at 20 years old? Back off.
Paris's relationship with the media is genius because she knows just how much to give and how much to hold back. She's a genius at teasing the media. She can just look at the camera and she knows how to get her face on the cover of everything in the world.
This is a smart girl who's just young and, and makes some mistakes, like a lot of young people. She loves to go out and party and have fun. She loves to live her life. And what a life it is.
Paris Hilton's life of luxury can be traced back to surprisingly humble beginnings. A rundown flophouse in the rural oil town of Cisco, Texas. The Mobley Hotel was the first property purchased by Paris's great-grandfather, Conrad Hilton Sr., in 1919.
Conrad Hilton was a very hard-charging guy, and he just, built one hotel after another, and built the biggest hotel chain in the world.
Over the next 20 years, Conrad Hilton built an empire that spanned the globe and made him one of the richest men in the world. His motto was live with enthusiasm, and Hilton did just that. In 1942, the 54-year-old divorcee shocked colleagues by marrying a sexy 25-year-old beauty queen, Zsa Zsa Gabor. Their stormy marriage lasted 5 years and marked the start of the Hilton family's fascination with Hollywood. In 1950, Hilton's oldest son, Conrad Nicky Jr., made headlines when he married 18-year-old movie star Elizabeth Taylor. The marriage ended in divorce after 7 months. 19 years later, the hard-living Nicky died of a heart attack at age 42. By that time, the Hilton Corporation was being run by Conrad's second son, Barron. Barron had his own Hollywood connections, and for Barron's son, Rick, being surrounded by celebrities was just part of growing up Hilton.
One time Rick was telling a wonderful story about his dad and Uncle Frank, and you realize that it's Frank Sinatra.
But it wasn't a famous movie star who eventually joined Rick at the altar. It was a young, aspiring actress named Kathy Richards.
Kathy was an actress out in LA, and she and Rick were, high school sweethearts and married very young, and they started having kids very young.
The lives of Kathy and Rick's children seemed predestined to follow a predictable path of luxury and time-honored social tradition. But the destiny of their firstborn daughter, Paris Hilton, would soon prove to be anything but predictable. On February 17, 1981, Kathy and Rick Hilton welcomed their first child into the world, Paris Whitney Hilton, born in New York City, but named after one of Kathy's favorite European capitals.
She was the most beautiful baby you've ever seen. I was a frustrated makeup artist, so I would put eye makeup and lip gloss and do her hair, and I would just stare at her and think, oh my God, it's way better than dolls.
Kathy is very loving, and the same with Rick, her father. They're actually a very close family. In a lot of ways, believe it or not, very traditional.
The girl nicknamed Star by her nanny was close to both of her parents. During her childhood in Beverly Hills, she also loved playing with her two brothers and the sister born 2 years after her, Nikki.
Paris and I are obviously we're sisters, but we're best friends. We're very close. We tell each other everything. We're very close.
The sisters grew up in the most elaborate playground imaginable, the 40-room Hilton Mansion in Los Angeles. But early on, Paris stood out as the natural-born performer, and she turned the family's living room into her own stage.
As a little girl, she always said she wanted to be an actress or a singer. She loved to sing and dance, and, we'd be sitting around, at Christmas or family dinners, and they'd all come down and do little shows, singing and dancing for us.
The girls were quite different as children. Nikki was quieter and kind of more mild-mannered, where Paris was always more outgoing and boisterous.
She had every animal you could think of. She had so many ferrets and dogs, cats. There'd be nothing for her to stick like a mouse in your purse to see your reaction when you'd open your purse and there'd be like a big rat there with the tail hanging out.
But while attending a string of private schools, the teenage Paris learned that looks and wealth didn't guarantee popularity.
There was jealousy, being picked on. I had to go down a couple times and straighten a few people out. But she was definitely picked on. You hear the last name, and she was always a beautiful girl. And that doesn't make for making a lot of friends with girls. She had to sort of have this feeling of, I don't really care what anybody thinks. I don't care, it doesn't hurt me. But I think it definitely did it.
Paris spent much of her childhood shuttling between palatial homes in Beverly Hills and the East Hamptons. By age 15, her main address was in Manhattan, at the crown jewel of the Hilton Hotel Corporation, the Waldorf Astoria.
It was fun. For the first few weeks when Paris and I moved, we weren't enrolled in school yet, so the conference rooms at the Waldorf were actually our classrooms. It's like we were two little Eloises, going downstairs, looking at the parties, coming back upstairs.
As they joined their parents at parties, polo matches, and benefits, Paris and Nikki were excited to find they were also becoming New York celebrities.
People started taking their photographs. They were getting invited to everything. It was sort of rare to see somebody that young who was making the scene, and so they sort of became famous for being like the youngest sort of socialites out on the scene.
Paris never had a publicist. This was the press doing this on their own. They were fascinated by her.
Paris was also making a name for herself outside her parents' sophisticated circle, living it up in New York's hottest nightclubs.
Paris, as a teenager in the nightclubs of Manhattan, was a lightning rod for controversy and trouble. She's 16, 17 years old. She's in a club where technically you have to be 21, partying and wearing very provocative clothes and dating much older men and putting on a big show for everyone.
By 1998, 17-year-old Paris wanted to be more than a Manhattan social fixture and party girl. The fashion-obsessed teen had set her sights on becoming a model and an actress.
Paris was always interested in fashion and was around modeling. From the time she was a little girl, would go to benefits, fundraisers, regular fashion shows with her mom. She actually would even, walk the runway.
When she was 16 or 17, wanted to start modeling, and my parents were like, no, 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 and Paris would not take no for an answer.
The first time Paris came up here, she was in her crazy low-cut jeans and stomach-bearing little tank top with some rhinestone jewelry on and big sunglasses with her little dog. I was like, oh wow, okay, Paris is here. And, but she's always in a rush, and put the clothes on, but then just loved trying on the clothes. And this was really fun to see a model who was so into the clothes and just loved wearing them. She has the perfect model body, those really long legs, beautiful torso, just the perfect shape that make clothes look really great. Paris has a very unique walk. It's almost slightly gawky, but then she picks it up with a little sexy touch. And then she has a way of moving her head from side to side, sort of cocking it and finding the right light that just hits her face properly. It's great to watch, she's a performer.
No one sasses down a runway better than Paris. She just owns it. Early on, when she was just getting to be known, people would go to a fashion show and they'd say, oh, there's Paris Hilton here. And then they'd watch her and they'd say, well, at least she can model like nobody's business.
The press, the photographers who covered from the beginning, figured this one girl, and I went, why? She's magic. It happens on camera. The vivacity, the vitality, the exuberance, the beauty.
Paris was definitely controversial right from the beginning because people thought, oh, she's got all the advantage in the world. She's a rich girl and, she can become a model just like that. But it's not true. You may get through the door, but you got to deliver.
The 19-year-old was hungry to push her fame to the next level, and she wasn't afraid to shock in order to succeed. Without her parents' knowledge, Paris posed with Nikki in an 11-page photo spread in Vanity Fair, wearing a necklace that said it all. The nearly topless heiress made obscene gestures at the camera in photos taken inside her grandmother's stately Beverly Hills mansion.
They became known as the nipple shots. I mean, these were see-through clothing, they're basically naked, and it was extremely provocative. And mind you, very calculated.
When it was coming out, she was really nervous. She was scared about what Kathy and Rick and what my mom were gonna say because she knew they were not gonna be happy. And this whole big thing snowballed.
Immediately, that comes out, They're in the New York Post. They're in the New York Daily News, Us Weekly. They're in People magazine.
As the party-hopping pair became more and more famous, the girl Vanity Fair called a hip-hop Deb reveled in her image as a society bad girl.
They'd go to parties and overtake the actual Hollywood celebrities, and because they would be dancing and acting crazy, and they were dressing more provocative, sexier, and just more fashionable. They had socially inserted themselves into this whole milieu in Hollywood, and I think they really created a new form of celebrity by doing it.
Thank you, Paris. You're a doll. Thank you. We're your fan club.
By 2001, 20-year-old Paris Hilton felt ready to transition from modeling to movie acting. But for the paparazzi that followed her every move, Paris's best performances were the ones she gave in nightclubs, from New York to Hollywood.
Paris was one of the original table dancers where there's not a lot of room on the dance floor. People would just start climbing on top of tables and dancing.
Tabloids linked her romantically with a long line of partners. Model Jason Shaw, entrepreneur Rick Solomon, actors Edward Furlong and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Let's just say that Paris Hilton has taken the romantic Hollywood embrace and made it damn near X-rated and gotten away with it in public.
There's been a couple of brawls with some other women who felt that she was flirting with their boyfriends, or their boyfriends were paying too much attention to her.
If she doesn't like someone, she'll tell you she doesn't like somebody. She's a very honest person, actually. And yeah, she got into fights with people. There was a well-reported cat fight with Shannon Doherty.
It never fails. There's some stupid schmuck who's at the heart of a little cat fight, often between two gals, Shannon Doherty and Paris Hilton, all over Rick Solomon. What are they both thinking?
Paris drove home. She was out in LA at the time. She drove up into the Hollywood Hills, and a few hours later, her vehicle had been smeared with grease and paint, and she wasn't even able to identify some of the messy stuff that was poured all over her car. And I thought the funny part was that instead of trying to clean the car off, she just like abandoned it there. The cops finally towed it away.
I don't think too much love is lost between Shannon Doherty and Paris Hilton, although on the record they say they're great friends, and I'm a natural blonde.
Paris's life constantly made headlines, like the celebration of her 21st birthday in 5 different cities. But the heiress hadn't achieved the kind of fame she wanted most. After a few minor movie parts in films like Sweetie Pie and Zoolander, Hilton's ambitions to become an actress seemed to have hit a dead end. Then, in December of 2002, one phone call changed everything. The Fox television network wanted Paris and Nikki to star in their own reality series. It would be called The Simple Life. The girls would play versions of themselves, spoiled heiresses forced to do local jobs while living with a family in a small town in the Ozarks, far from the trappings of wealth. Paris liked the idea, but Nikki said no.
My mother and I were 2 people when Paris was preparing to do The Simple Life. We're like, you cannot do this. Like, don't do a reality television show, Paris. They're silly. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Nikki's definitely the more conservative one. Nikki's more the socialite apparent. Also beautiful, also sexy, but in a sort of a calmer way, more subdued. Paris definitely just soaks up the spotlight and almost sort of demands attention.
To replace Nikki, Fox chose Nicole Richie, the wealthy daughter of singer Lionel Richie, and a friend of Paris's since childhood.
They were just good friends when they were very young, and Lionel was one of the people who came by Rick and Kathy's house, and there we are, a match made in heaven.
In the spring of 2003, Paris and Nicole began their 4-week stay in Altus, Arkansas, population 817. Accompanied by Hilton's Chihuahua, Tinkerbell, the girls moved in with the 7 members of the local Letting family.
We had never heard anything about Paris before she ever came. I didn't even know who she was.
Oh my God.
Hi. Okay, I'm Janet.
Hey.
Tinkerbell.
I'm Albert.
Hey, Albert, Paris.
I don't know how they dress out in LA if everybody dresses like that.
Well, their clothing is a little different than what most girls wear around here.
This just may be what they're accustomed to.
Skimpy.
Paris's first reaction to the home was